Good evening and welcome to Breaking Today News watching Switch TV. My name is Lincoln Ombogo. Our sign language interpreter is Tracy Dorcas. We have a lot in line for you tonight, but first let's take a look at the headlines. Former Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko to remain in police custody pending the ruling on bail application on Thursday. Deafening sound of war drums, ODM leader Raila raises concern as the country warms up towards 2022 elections. And tonight we look at how wearing of masks as a measure of curbing the spread of COVID-19 has greatly hampered communication among those with hearing impairment who depend heavily on lip syncing to understand and respond effectively. We're live on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter. On YouTube, we're live at Switch TV News, sending your feedback to our SMS line 111 444 111 and at Switch TV Kenya and at Lincoln. Mike Sonko has been denied bail. The former Nairobi governor will remain in custody until Wednesday, the 4th of February. 2 days from now, Sonko denied all 10 charges that comprised of assault and forceful aggression, among others. Moving on, ODM leader Raila has raised concerns with what he terms as deafening sounds of war drums as the country heads to 2022 elections. He called on Kenyans to be wary of leaders propagating violence, saying the country's stability is at stake. The opposition leader also said a section of political class is hell-bent in pushing the country to the edge for their selfish interest, also adding that the BBI report seeks to help the common mwananchi.
Issues that may not be directly economic in nature, but have serious impact on our economy, like elections, for instance. Elections must cease being civil wars. BBI seeks to usher in an electoral system where every vote is counted and every vote counts. This country comes to a standstill and loses billions, jobs and lives every election year due to violence. Already the drums of war are being sounded, and it is easy to tell how it will end. And yesterday I was telling them, we are still more than 1.5 years to the elections. Yet they are behaving as if elections are tomorrow. We have to decide whether we want elections or civil wars every 5 years.
Meanwhile, President Uhuru Kenyatta has restated his commitment to fulfill his election pledges, key among them being the expansion of electricity connectivity, opening up of more roads and accelerating the growth of small businesses. The president spoke last evening at Kimahuru in Kieni East, Nyeri County, where he commissioned the last-mile electricity connectivity project that will benefit 216 households and several public institutions, including schools, markets and health centers. He said over 70% of homes in Kenya were connected to the national grid, compared to only 30% that had electricity when he took over the nation's leadership in 2013. Addressing area residents, the head of state announced government plans to tarmac the Sagana-Ndathi-Narumoro Road, set up a milk cooling facility and a hospital in the area. On BBI, the head of state rallied area residents to support the law reform process, saying its proposals will ensure sufficient resources go to counties to benefit wananchi.
Thiko cigana ona tukiaria na andu a kirima giki gitu na tukigaragia kuiguithania ati hena bata wa andu aitu gukinyukia ikinya me hamwe. Ene turaiguithania andu aitu gukinyania ikinya meki me hamwe. No mothe niguo twoka kurikiriria twina mucemanio na atongoria muthurite akona bale aria twitaga gavana tondu turambiriirie na ma MCA no muthe twarikia na magavana nigetha tuiguithanie uria tukurutithania wira.
Elsewhere, the Maasai Council of Elders has officially settled its differences after Kasaine Oleleshaw, the former Council of Elders chairman, conceded defeat and withdrew a petition against newly elected Chair Kelele Ole Nchoe. The move comes at a time when the elders are working hard to foster unity in the community that has been divided on clan basis. The newly elected chairperson, Olen Choi, has since declared that he will work hard to ensure that the 8 sub-clans of the Maasai are united. Narok, Kajiado, Samburu and Baringo counties unite on a common political ground. The chairperson has urged the elected leaders to stop endorsing leaders, maintaining that the Council of Elders are now expected to guide the community on political directions.
Tunataka kila jamii wajichagulie viongozi wao na tuende tuungane na viongozi wale wengine wa Kenya ili kujenga Kenya. Lakini sio watu kuja kutufundisha huyu ndio tunamtaka, yule ambaye hatumtaki hata ingia. Kwa hivyo hatutaki wheelbarrows kutoka kwingine, tuna uwezo yetu ya kununulia watoto wetu na wao kununua.
Leo tumewasha hii kiti Njoe. Nina beba hiyo mizigo ya kaunti mzima yote, na mimi napatia hiyo kiti kwa kufurahi, kwa furaha na upendo.
Now, Mike Sonko has been denied bail. The former Nairobi governor will remain in custody until Wednesday, the 4th of February, 2 days from now. Sonko denied all the 10 charges that comprise of assault and forceful aggression, among others.
Former Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko appeared before the court today on charges of assault and forceful entry to private property. Sonko's legal team argued that the former governor was being detained under unfounded grounds. However, the ousted governor will remain in custody for 2 more days. This has been received unceremoniously by Omari's legal representative, saying it is unfair that he is being charged on previous charges.
The disconnect between the purpose of the summons and the charging is either one, the state decided not to pursue the incitement charges, and because already they had summoned Sonko, an afterthought was charge him over that incident in Buruburu.
Former Governor Mike Sonko has denied to all the 7 offences that includes propagating the 2017 election chaos and has been denied bail. But according to the proceedings, the focus has been majorly on his previous misconducts. Mike Sonko has been on a verbal rampage. You can call him a bitter man, but it is evident that he has evidence on government secrets, and if he gets charged on Wednesday, it is so obvious that he is going to go down with key principles in the government. Reporting for Switch TV, my name is Joan Kutun.
Beg your pardon, Sonko will remain in custody until Thursday when the bail application is heard. Thank you, Joan Kutuni, for that story. The progression of political affairs in the country are a clear indication of the rising political temperatures. Governance experts hold that Kenyan leaders, especially politicians, have failed to learn from past lessons that have been taught by past occurrences and especially elections. Speaking to Switch TV today on matters political violence, Kevin Osido, a governance expert, added that leaders should set positive examples among Kenyans, especially the youth, to be peace ambassadors all over the country. Majibu Kitsar reports.
Arguments, wrangling, the current political happenings and sentiments by politicians in different occasions are a clear indication that the political temperature in the country is rising. The latest sprawling match between Mugirango Member of Parliament Silvana Sosoro and his Dagoretti North counterpart Simba Arati during a funeral in Kisii County is just one among a whole slew of events that have caused political outcry among Kenyans.
Kulingana jana ile viongozi walionyesha tabia mbaya, kwanza walienda matanga bale, walienda kuomboleza na kubea wenye boma pole. Si ati wanaenda kuleta siasa na kuanza kutuhusiana na kupigana. Kulingana maoni yangu, hiyo ni viongozi na wanatuonyesha tabia mbaya. Ni kumaanisha 2022 wameanza kujipanga tabia ambayo haitatusaidia. Kwanza Ruto alikuwa pale, Raila alikuwa pale, wanaangalia hao watu wakipigana. Baadaye Raila, Ruto wanaongea hapo. Na hao wengine wamepigana, sasa wanapigania nini?
Hakika kile kisanga tuliona jana, tulishuhudia jana, sisi wananchi ambao tunapenda amani, hakika tu kufurahia. Viongozi hao wanastahili wakuwe kielelezo ambacho sisi vijana ambao wanakuja sasa wapate kuiga, lakini ikiwa watachukua fursa kwenda katika majukwaa na kuanza kupigana, hiyo ni chanja kuonyesha kwamba hata tutakapofika katika uchaguzi ambao tunautarajia mwaka ujao 2022, inaonyesha kwamba wananchi ambao katika mashinani kama sisi, hicho ndio itakuwa chanjo cha vita, ambapo sisi wa Kenya ambao tunapenda amani hatutaki kuwa kama viongozi hawa. Na ikiwa 2022 itafika, viongozi wale ambao walipigana jana tunawahakikishia ya kwamba hawatarudi katika bunge, maana tunataka wale viongozi ambao wataleta amani. Sisi nchi ya Kenya ni nchi ambayo inapenda amani.
According to Kevin Osindo, a governance expert, political leaders have failed to learn from past lessons that have been taught by past occurrences and especially elections.
It's a very unfortunate occurrence in our country, and it looks like Kenyans, particularly our political leaders, have failed to learn from lessons that we have been taught by past occurrences, particularly our elections. Right from the first elections all the way to 2007, when we were worst hit as a country, losing very many hundreds, thousands of lives, property displaced, and thousands of Kenyans as well displaced.
From the recent happenings in Burma to Githurai, it's clear that there has been an increase in cases of rampage, especially among young men as the perpetrators of violence. Osindo holds that the youth can be exempted from such issues if more employment opportunities are created among them.
Let politicians expand opportunities for young people to be employed. The people who are mobilizing youth against each other have the power through the houses where they sit in, either as members of county assemblies, through the county assemblies, or members of national assemblies, to legislate on policies and legal frameworks that can be able to expand opportunities for young people to be employed.
Osindo further urges politicians to provide safer landing grounds among Kenyans to exercise meaningful productivity towards the growth of the economy. Majibu Kitsao for Switch TV.
Thank you, Majibu Kitsao. Ministry of Devolution Cabinet Secretary Eugene Wamalwa has called on politicians to manage their politics, saying that it could further derail government agenda. He warned that over-politicking will chase away investors and asked them to be a bit patient as the cry is still 18 months shy of the next general elections in 2022. Wamalwa was speaking in Nairobi during the National Development Implementation and Communication Cabinet meeting. Projects assessment by cabinet secretaries noted that the country needs goodwill from investors and politics of hate could drive them away.
We want this to be taken as a model for Africa and for other developing countries, that you can invest, you can attract private investors to come into your country and invest over $600 million. I think it is not a joke. But why is this possible? It's because of the stability Kenya has enjoyed. And we want to urge that, particularly for our politicians, if we can heed what the president has said, we still have 18 months to go before the next general elections. If we can support the president, support the agendas that he's pushing, so we stabilize the country, in the next 12 months, this project will be completed. We have a port being built in Kisumu. We are being told by early next year it will also be completed. In Mombasa, in Lamu, all we need is stability. But when the time for politics comes next year, we will do the politics. So please, even as we appreciate the work here, the only thing we need to manage is our politics, tone down, so that we don't scare away investors such as this. We attract more PPPs.
Moving on, wearing of masks as a measure of curbing the spread of COVID-19 has greatly hampered means of communication to the deaf society, who depend heavily on lip-syncing to understand and respond effectively. Now, as Robert Omer reports, the deaf community give us an optional way to ensure communication with them remains effective even amid the pandemic.
Ever since the pandemic struck the country early last year, many sectors have stagnated in their operations and the deaf community was not left behind.
Not all deaf people are totally mute. Some people can, one, read your lips and they have some speech. But for now, with Corona, we have to keep our mask on and we get stuck a lot. I eyes are very important part of our lives because we can't hear, as I said. The same way you see our eyes work even as our ears. That's the most important thing for us.
In a world where communication is key, survival scheme is definitely necessary, and there are do's and don'ts of how to effectively communicate with a deaf person.
And you want to talk to them, the first thing is that you tap them so that they can look at you and you have a communication. And also when you're talking to them, to a deaf person, try to focus and to have eye contact as you communicate. You don't keep turning or looking ahead, yeah? So that will not be fair. So you look at them and have eye contact as you talk. That's the best way. So when you're talking to a deaf person, I know most of you see a deaf person, then you feel like, I don't want to talk to this person because he can't hear me. The two of us are having a communication, and then someone passes through between us. For deaf people, this is rude. It means that you don't respect people when you pass in between them.
To them, lighting is key.
So I can even use my phone, yes, and then we can communicate, like just to light us. So you don't shine the light on their face.
Emily Wambui Muraguri is a teacher and a sign language expert in Kambui High School for the Deaf.
So we need to stop doing everything, believing that it's like we think that they are being punished, but they're not. Empowerment starts from the basic thing.
Wambui says that understanding the deaf community is a long-time assignment that can only be completed by a sober and accommodative society.
If we are being inclusive, let's be inclusive all the way, not just halfway.
Robert Oma, Switch TV News.
Robert Oma, still we now take a short commercial break. Stay tuned, we'll be back with more. Welcome back and thank you for keeping it Switch TV. We are live on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter. On YouTube, we are live as Switch TV News. Send in your feedback to our SMS line 111 444 and at Switch TV Kenya. Today being World Wetlands Day, Environment Cabinet Secretary Keriako Tobiko has underscored the importance of mangrove forests in the country, saying that the government was committed to protect them from degradation as it works towards gazetting all wetlands in the country. According to the ministry, about 60% of the forests in Kenya were degraded, and Tobiko says his ministry is implementing a 15-year mangrove master plan 2016 to 2030 to ensure the marine forests are protected for posterity. The exercise, which saw more than 9,000 mangrove tree seedlings planted at the estuary, was a part of a build-up exercise for celebrations to mark this year's World Wetlands Day, held today at the Sabaki estuary. Mangroves are crucial in protecting the marine ecosystems and also for livelihoods, as the coastal communities depend on them for production of wood, building materials and fishing. The Ministry of Environment is now planning to fence off the Sabaki sanctuary and educate communities surrounding it on how to sustainably benefit from it.
In many respects, mangroves in terms of capacity for carbon sequestration. One mangrove plant is equal to 10 trees, terrestrial trees. So when you plant, today we planted about 9,000 mangrove plants or seedlings. You multiply that by 10 and you know the equivalent of trees that we planted.
And after Myanmar's military seized power in a bloodless coup, detaining democratically elected leader Aung San Suu Kyi and imposing a one-year state of emergency, the intervention has ended a decade of civilian rule in Myanmar, with the military justifying its power grab by alleging fraud in the November election that Suu Kyi Nationals League for Democracy Party won in a landslide.
Myanmar's November polls were only the second democratic elections the country had seen since it emerged from the 49-year grip of military rule in 2011. The coup has sparked global condemnation, with the US President Joe Biden calling on Myanmar's military to relinquish power immediately, reimposing sanctions lifted during their nation's transition to democracy.
I think that's why that was called out in the president's comments. As you know, we removed sanctions, the United States, I should say, removed sanctions on Burma over the past decade based on progress toward democracy. The reversal of that progress will necessitate an immediate review of our sanctions laws and authorities, followed by appropriate action.
Suu Kyi and President Win Myint were detained in the capital Naypyidaw before dawn. The military sealed off roads around the capital with armed troops, trucks and armored personnel carriers. Military helicopters flew across the city.
We did not expect the coup. I thought the military would step back after they did what they wanted. The duty of the military is to protect the country, not to rule the country. They are not staying in their place, and that makes trouble.
The army later pledged to hold fresh elections after the year-long state of emergency. Suu Kyi had issued a preemptive statement ahead of her detention, calling on people not to accept a coup.
We have waited for 72 hours, but people won't go on the street and protest. Everyone knows the military has guns, and they are used to shooting people. I think people will use another way to protest.
The party of Myanmar has toppled leader Suu Kyi, demanding her immediate release. The military claimed to have uncovered more than 10 million instances of voter fraud. Monday's events seemed to stun the country, with the military strangling the internet as the coup was unfolding, but has since eased restrictions. Nyakundi Kelvin, Switch TV.
Right, it's time for business. Good evening and welcome. My name is Clifford Ndubi. The National Treasury has defended the merger of Uwezo Fund, Women Enterprise Fund, and Youth Enterprise Fund in a single fund, saying the consolidation will best help the marginalized groups access credit. Speaking on the sidelines of a meeting with the Parliamentary Committee on Delegated Legislation meeting in Mombasa to deliberate on some of the regulations and legislation forms affecting funds in Kenya, where the Treasury boss announced that the fund would be increased from 2.5 billion to 14 billion, and the government is keen to reduce overheads, make it targeted and ensure efficiency in accessibility and also avoid duplication. Now, away from that, 19 winners of the inaugural 2020 Africa Digital Influencer Award have been fitted. The event, first of its kind in Africa, featured 20 categories and identified digital influencers who use their talents on digital platforms to inspire and impact the society positively in Kenya and Africa. In the year 2020, the award ceremony was held at Konza Technopolis, and the event, which was attended by Kilome Member of Parliament Mr. Thaddeus Nzambia, Konza Technopolis Development Authority Chairman Dr. Ruben Mutiso, CEO Engineer John Tanui, and Africa Digital Leadership Principal and co-founder Mr. Chris Beatty, is aimed at enhancing the use of the digital media to develop the economy.
Today was a special case to see some of our top creative influencers, people who are really focusing on championing specific areas in business and many aspects affecting our economy, to work with us and to be celebrated today.
For us to choose Konza, as a host, they've understood that content creation is really going to fuel a lot of digital growth. For this thing, this is still a construction site, but just not a construction site as everybody thinks.
I would like to appreciate the chair and the CEO, because we have had some meetings with the ICT committees. We plan, we budget, we make sure that we have enough money through the national government to push this project forward. It's good to be conversant with what is happening here. Of course, what is ongoing is the infrastructural, horizontal development, and I really appreciate the work which has been done.
And finally, come August, the Kakamega airstrip will be operational after rehabilitation of the airstrip. Currently, KAA is conducting ongoing inspection across different airstrips in the country. The airstrip will be expanded from its 1.3 kilometers to 2 kilometers. The upgrading of Kakamega airstrip is the major project which KAA is implementing in Western region, fulfilling its mandate of administering, controlling and managing Kenya's aerodromes. Kakamega and Migori airstrips are being rehabilitated at 174.7 million and 243.1 billion respectively.
The Embraer 110, the Dash 7 and the Dash 8 with reduced payload. So those are some of the aircraft that we expect.
The land is intact. I've just inspected from end to end. There is no encroachment. We have a very good relationship with the local community, so we don't have reasons to worry about that. The plan is that by August this year, we should be pretty much done with this.
All right, that story from Kakamega County brings us to the end of our business news of the day. Up next is sports news. It's EPL night, and you know what? Arsenal, as usual, taking the 3 points against Wolverhampton. Lincoln Wambugu has all the latest.
Thank you, Clifford Ndobi. Cabinet Secretary for Sports Amina Mohammed has today ordered the contractor working on the water stadium out of sight due to slow progress of work and instead asked the National Youth Service to take charge. Amina toured the stadium today accompanied by her Labour counterpart Simon Chelugui and Sports Kenya chairperson Fred Muteti, where she expressed dissatisfaction with the work. The contractor is said to have only managed 35% of the project, with 45% of the total money set aside for the completion of the project already paid. The government has set aside 350 million shillings towards water stadium in Mukweni, and the contractor has been on site since 2018. English Premier League club Arsenal saw a considerable number of its players leave on loan before yesterday's transfer deadline. Arsenal coach Mikel Arteta had earlier on in the start of the new season indicated that he needed to offload some of the players when the just concluded transfer period opens. Among the players loaned out include Shkodran Mustafi, Ainsley Maitland, Joe Willock, Sid Colasin,